Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the presentation of the results of the Netherlands Sewell and Associates Incorporated crude oil audit for year end 2018 by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. Without further ado, I now hand you over to Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan for his feature address.
Thank you very much. Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Ms. Sandra Fraser, representatives of energy companies, members of staff of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, members of the media, especially invited guests listening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, and welcome to this presentation on the results of the independent audit of the country's crude oil reserves and resources for the year ending 2018, prepared by the company called Netherlands Sewell and Associates Limited out of Dallas in Texas. Most of you will be familiar where we have a presentation every year with the Ryder-Scott report. The Ryder-Scott report, which is conducted every year, deals with the gas reserves. The crude oil reserves is done probably once every 5 to 6 years. The last audit was done in 2012, and this audit now ends looking at the reserves at the end of 2018. NSAI, as I will call them now, which is Netherlands Sewell and Associates, is a worldwide leader of petroleum property analysis to industry and financial organizations and government agencies. It was established in 1961, and this company has offices in Dallas, Houston, and other parts of the United States. With 60-plus engineers, geologists, geophysicists, and petrophysicists, and 75-plus engineering and geological analysts, the company was uniquely qualified to conduct this study for the Ministry of Energy, since the lead on the audit has performed many evaluations of properties in Trinidad since the early 1990s. This is the second audit produced by NSAI for the Ministry of Energy. The first after a cabinet decision in 2011, and that audit was conducted in 2012. The results I am providing for you today is the results of the Trinidad and Tobago's oil reserves as at the end of 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, the estimates in this report have been prepared in accordance with the definition and guidelines set forth in the 2018 Petroleum Resource Management System. This has been approved by all the international bodies, the Society of Petroleum Engineers, the World Petroleum Council, the American Association of Petroleum Geologists, and the Society of Petroleum Evaluation Engineers. Thus, our hydrocarbon resources are being assessed in accordance with international industry standards, and the detailed country report produced by this independent consultant, NSAI, does provide a reliable basis for the development of national energy strategies. I move on now to the first slide. Permit me to summarize and compare the results of the most recent audit with that of January 1st, 2012. As can be seen on slide 1, and I want you to take a close look, which summarizes the audit in its major categories: reserves, contingent resources, and prospective resources. You will see that all categories of reserves, which are proven, probable, and possible, has seen an increase over the period. Proven reserves jumped by 10.3% from 199.5 million barrels to 220.1 million barrels. Probable reserves climbed by 8.5% from 124.8 million barrels to 135.5 million barrels. The 20.6 million barrels increase in proven reserves is a hopeful sign and is thanks to the maturity of and the operating commitment of our onshore operators and our operators on the West Coast in particular. If we turn now to our resource category, as can be seen on this slide also, NSAI's best estimate of the nation contingent resource rose by 17.2%, from 58 million barrels in 2012 to 68 million barrels in 2018. This contribution came from several well-known fields, such as Barrackpore, Penal, and Parilands, as well as one operational and one proposed water flooding program. While promising several geologic, economic, and technical hurdles need to be overcome for these resources to be promoted to the reserves category. Those of you who attended last November's presentation on the gas audit for the year 2018 will remember me almost boasting in my address about the very significant increases in our prospective resources due to the deepwater oil leads identified in the blocks operated by BHP. I am proud to announce that NSAI, our independent consultants out of Dallas, Texas, best estimate of our unrisked prospective resources is now a mammoth 3.2 billion barrels. This is an increase of 773% over the unrisked prospective reserves as of January 1, 2012, which at that point in time was only 368 million barrels. This notable resource estimate, more than 90% of which was identified in the deep water, could not be possible without the achievements of BHP and its partner Shell in acquiring and processing and interpreting the prospects on the southern deepwater blocks. As I speak, and I've said this in many conferences and in many fora over the last several months, with the Invictus drill ship, that's a deepwater drill ship, now in transit to Trinidad from the Gulf of Mexico, to drill the Broadside prospect, which incidentally will be the deepest well ever to be drilled in Trinidad and Tobago. A commercial discovery in any of its several stacked Miocene targets would de-risk the prospective resources identified by NSAI significantly. And ladies and gentlemen, that will be tremendously good news for Trinidad and Tobago. But I just want to make the point that prospective reserves is not proven reserves. It is the geological models that you articulate that says if you drill these prospects and it is successful, your reserves will ramp up significantly. So the narrative must be the potential is there, but you have to have the investment, the technology, and the human resources to move it from prospective reserves into the proven category. And this, I think, we have in Trinidad and Tobago. This, I think, we have credible and world-class international operators in the deep water, BHP in particular, with its partners Shell and BP. So based on that alone, I think Trinidad is well positioned for some quite positive results in the short term and the medium term. This other slide here indicates it's a pie graph showing you where the proven categories lie. You will realize that on the East Coast Marine area, there was a decline from 31% to 18%. This was due to natural decline in the East Coast offshore. Bearing in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that the East Coast now is not considered a major oil province. It is a major gas province. So most of the discoveries of the East Coast are gas and not oil. So that is the reason why there was a decrease in the reserves for oil over the 6-year period. The West Coast in particular had stayed stable, and the major increase has come from land. However, we have some significant activities planned for both land and the offshore, especially in Western Trinidad, which used to be called the Trinma acreage, which I will deal with shortly. When the proven reserves of condensate for 2018, estimated by Ryder Scott, are added to the proven oil reserves, our proven reserves of crude oil and condensate are now 256.9 million barrels. This exceeds the figure in January 1, 2012 by 14 million barrels, or 5.7%. Upward revisions based on better production, performance, and committed projects result in a reserve replacement ratio of 107.2%. Let me just explain that. Over that 6-year period, this country produced 192 million barrels of oil. So if at 2018, end of 2018, our reserve replacement ratio is 107.2%, it means we have found and put into the proven category in excess of 200 million barrels of oil. And that is the significant thing. And bearing in mind, significant exploration, no development activity took place onshore nor the west coast of Trinidad and Tobago. The reserves to production ratio based on the oil and condensate production as at 2018 now stands at 11.1 years. This is an increase of 54% from the 2012 figure, which was 7.2 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, despite limited investment on land and on the west coast, we have still seen a ramp up of our proven reserves because of good reservoir management function. And now I go to the future. Next slide. These points I'm about to raise is not included in the 2018 audit. But these are activities that occurred post-2018 that will have a significant upswing on our proven oil reserves when we do the next audit, probably in 3 years or so from now. Besides the windfall, the possible windfall, I should say, or potential windfall in the deep water, which I just articulated, there are several continued exploration and development operations that are showing extremely positive signs. First and foremost is BHP Block 3A Ruby Field, which has now been moved from the contingent category to proven category post-2018. That field will be starting the drilling on that field later this year, and it is carded to peak in 2022 at 16,000 barrels of oil per day. We have also announced recently that on the onshore acreage in the Ottawa block, the Rio Claro block, and the St. Mary's block, which are operated by Touchstone and Lease Operators Limited, they have found significant oil and gas in the Coho and Cascadura discoveries that was published in the newspaper recently. Added to which, Columbus Energy, which is an independent operating on the Southwest Peninsula in the Cedros Icacos area, have discovered oil in the Middle Cruise Sands in a well called the Saffron Well, and they see high potential there for further discoveries down in the Cedros area. As you know, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries plans a deepwater bid round in 2021. The 2020, it's called now deepwater nomination period, is almost complete, which will result in a competitive bid round, which we hope to be quite successful in 2021. But I must say here now, to my predecessor in this job, he keeps saying that we didn't have a bid round. But I just want to clear the air on that. To have a bid round, you must bid on licensed acreage. You cannot bid on acreage that some other company owns. All the acreage onshore and in the west coast of Trinidad are under license. On the east coast shallow water, over 80 to 90% of the acreage is also under license. The only place we have open acreage of significance is in the deep water. But it would have been foolish on the ministry's part to have a deep water bidong concurrently while BHP was exploring and spending significant money in the deep water with very positive results. When these results are now tabulated and put into the data set for the 2021 bidong, you will attract more investors. So you don't just have a bidong for bidong's sake, or to just keep announcing bidong. These things are driven by technology, by strategy, and those of us, including myself, who understand the exploration business. And for the uninformed, they keep speaking this foolish narrative about this administration has had no bidong. There will be a bidong next year, but a very attractive bidong, largely based and piggybacked on BHP's success in the deep water. On the Trinma side, we have major activities planned there. Trinma has a memorandum of understanding with Shell, where Shell will be conducting significant offshore ocean bottom cable seismic over the acreage. They are in some discussions with EOG to develop the Southwest Soldado field. And all in all, I expect over the next 3 to 5 years a significant ramp in oil production and oil reserves. And I keep making the point that it is my concerted view that oil is still better business than gas in Trinidad. Because 3 factors account for that. One, there's no transfer pricing in oil. Every crude in this world is traded against a reference crude. So you can't transfer price oil. If Heritage is selling oil, it is selling at Brent -3. Brent -3, any part of the world is Brent -3. Secondly, the state has a more robust taxation system for oil. It includes royalties, supplemental petroleum tax or SPT, and PPT, petroleum profit tax. So in other words, the state extracts significantly better economic rent from oil production. And thirdly, and this should not be underestimated, oil wells require more servicing work than gas wells. So the service sector, which is under stress in Trinidad and Tobago, all the service companies that work in the energy sector gets more work to service wells and to keep wells on production when it is oil wells. Gas wells usually produce trouble-free in unmanned offshore platforms. So in terms of employment generation, the oil wells are something better to have because it has more value add. I'm not taking anything away from gas, but I'm just articulating a case that we should focus on oil and try to get our oil production up. This Netherlands report is a step in the right direction. It is a positive sign, and I think once the international market stabilizes, I see this morning Brent is approaching $45 per barrel. WTI, I think, is 42 or 41 something. And I think as the global economy starts to pick back up, oil prices will continue along that trend. So it's good to have good news. And today I wanted to share this good news with the country and to say that the Trinidad's energy sector, despite the current challenges of the global economy, is still sitting in a very comfortable place. I thank you, and I will accept questions from the media.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We now open the floor to any questions from the media. Questions from the media? Okay, we have one question.
Hello.
Okay, please state your name and media house, Mr. Cummings.
Okay, Stephen Cummings here, 98.1 FM. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning.
Yes, just a general question, Minister. Of course, you referenced it. We are in a very, very unusual times. We have the pandemic with us, and of course, you've just mentioned some good news where, our energy, oil, and gas sector is concerned. I'm wondering if you can give us any idea or tell us about the security aspect of it, because we are going to have measures in place to ensure that good news continues in terms of the security of our oil and energy sectors. The security of it, what can you tell us in terms of what has been done and what is being done right now?
You mean security as with respect to COVID regulations?
In a COVID one, yes, and how are we managing that whole aspect to ensure that we don't have any disruption, physical disruption, as it were?
You have to understand that the companies that operate, especially in the offshore, are international companies that place the highest regard, and it is top of their protocol list, is health, safety, and the environment. These companies left no stone unturned in monitoring health and safety. As a matter of fact, BP even announced today certain cutbacks globally of its investments. Trinidad and Tobago is largely untouched, but BP indicated in that press conference that anything that deals with health, safety, and environment will always have capital to invest and to deal with those situations. There are a lot of protocols that has been worked out, especially for offshore workers who are coming in from abroad, for crew changes. They are quarantined before they come. When they come when they land at Piaku, they are taken immediately on chopper to the offshore rigs. All the protocols are there. Unfortunately, let me knock on wood, we haven't had an incident of COVID spread or anything of the sort in the energy sector, especially on the offshore rig. So I think, knock on wood, I think we're doing reasonably well. But as I said, these are dangerous times. I make no predictions because anything is possible. But the companies and the Ministry of Energy and the government, by extension, is putting everything in place to make sure that that eventuality doesn't occur. There are security matters with regards to security of assets, which is really handled by the Ministry of National Security and the Coast Guard.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the media? Again, the floor is open. Okay. Ms. Burgell, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Minister. This is Carla Burgell from New Newsday.
Yes, Carla.
So first of all, I think you kind of mentioned it a bit, but can you give me an idea? Obviously, these reserves take time to develop. Can you give me an idea of the timeline that the country might actually start seeing some sort of returns for these proven reserves? And I mean, the second question is we're gonna have a bid round next year. Do you think this is going to, help with selling that bid round to international, more international investors? And the third question is, how do you see, obviously this is good news for us, but oil is still a fossil fuel. How does this, windfall, if you will, tie back into the renewable energies trend and all renewable energies trend as a country?
Well, lots of questions you asked there. The proven reserves are currently being produced. Proven reserves are reserves that are defined and that is economically justified to produce. The country produces around 60,000 barrels a day, and it produces that from its proven category. The projects that are coming on stream now, the biggest one next year is the Ruby field, which will be bringing in 16,000 barrels of oil per day of new production. And we haven't quantified the Touchstone and the lease operators' potential in the Ottawa and the Rio Claro block, but those will very likely bring in both oil and gas in significant quantities. As the exploration process continues, especially on the West Coast, we hope to ramp up production there within 3 years or so. So I think it is looking fairly good. Finally, on your renewables side, as you know, the ministry and the government has recently signed a contract with BP and Shell, a joint venture, to build a solar power plant that produces 150 megawatts of electricity, which is 10% of the power generation capacity in Trinidad and Tobago. By that project, we would be now in full compliance with our commitment to Paris. However, having said that, I personally think that 10% is not sufficient, and in the new term that this government will be having on the 11th, we will focus on pushing that envelope on renewables and zero carbon and low carbon energy even further beyond. However, the reality of the situation is that Trinidad still gets most of its revenue from fossil fuel. It's a reality we'll have to face for the coming decades. However, on the good side of it, because we are a gas-based economy, when all is said and done, natural gas is the cleanest of all fossil fuels. Because I always make the point that what is the use of an electric car when you're generating that power from coal? Okay? Trinidad and Tobago is one of the few countries in the world that generates 100% of its electricity from natural gas. No one, it's just about 5 other countries in the world, largely in the Middle East, have that record to say it's theirs. So even from an environmental point of view, we are not where we want to be, but I think we are not as bad as most people think.
Honorable Minister, we have a question from Curtis Williams from Guardian Media. Can the minister say if the heavy oil in Heritage was included, and what was that figure? Heavy oil and tar sands.
No, the heavy oil and tar sands is not included because the economics of it is still beyond the range of proven reserves. However, Curtis, you will be monitoring the industry. You will see that Heritage has gone out for expression of interest on this Jubilee field, which is largely a heavy oil field, which supposedly has close to 1 billion barrels of oil in place. And again, that's a project, probably I should have mentioned it here, that seems to have some really good upside potential. So there's the Southwest Soldado in Trinidad, there's the Shell ocean bottom cable seismic program that is on stream, and then there's the expression of interest and what will turn out to be a bid round, more or less, for the Jubilee field in North Soldado.
We have a question from Stephen Cummings again.
Just one final question for me, really. I know that, in the past, we continue to have some kind of relationship with Venezuela, when it comes to oil. I'm wondering if there's anything that you can say or give us an update on as to what is the situation between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela with respect to sharing. I know that there's been lots of discussion along that line. Is there any update that you can give us in terms of our relationship, oil, Trinidad and Tobago, and Venezuela?
Well, I think that issue has been very well articulated in the public. We have a good relationship with our next-door neighbors. We had initiated 2 major projects, which is the Dragon gas deal, and then recently the Loran Manatee and the linking of the Manatee field from Loran. We all know the current situation in Venezuela. It is a situation that has not been resolved. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Venezuela, and based on those sanctions, those projects have been put on hold. There's nothing more I can say to that, and that is a matter for the international political arena to sort itself out.
Thank you.
We have a question from Carla Bridgell again.
Hi, Minister. Just one more thing to clarify. Can you just tell me the date of this report? I mean, why was it? I mean, obviously it was done in 2018 and we're getting the results in 2020. Can you just explain that?
No, well, these you have to have a cutoff date because a lot of this data set takes about a year to compile, and you really do it in 5 to 6 year cycles. So the next oil audit will very likely be 2022 to 2023. That's how it goes. In fact, as we speak, even the gas audit, the last one we had was at the end of 2018. The 2019 oil audit is almost completed, and it will be presented to the country in probably a month or two.
All right, thank you.
We have 2 more questions from Curtis Williams. Is the government concerned about the new approach by BP to move away from being an oil and gas company, and how projects will have to fight for approval with less money for E&P? That's the first question.
And I know Curtis is on the ball with these things. BP, I was speaking to BP's president this morning because I expected questions along those lines. BP has taken a position that they want to be a net zero carbon emitter by 2050 or earlier. So they have had a major strategy shift as they go into the future. However, in the short to medium term, they have to keep investing in hydrocarbon assets because you do not run a company without cash. And the component of the business that currently generates that is oil and gas. But having said that, they have made a shift. They have claimed, or they have said, that the competition for capital will be more intense now. They have taken a decision not to get involved in any new greenfield exploration projects in new countries, and possibly any exploration, wildcat exploration in existing countries. But, as I said, Trinidad and Tobago, in the short term here, has been largely untouched. We always had to compete for capital among the BPs and the Shells, you know. The reason why we attracted capital is because we had good investment. And we are fortunate today that we have such an advanced infrastructure of oil and gas networks and pipelines and platforms that to develop smaller fields on the periphery of the existing production is not as expensive as if you're going into greenfield areas. So I think based on the scenario in which we are operating, we will continue to win capital injection into BP and Shell in particular, asset base in Trinidad and Tobago. There is a risk there which we have to continue to manage. The game is changing, and therefore Trinidad will have to change with it. But in the short term, which is the next, I would say, 2 to 5 years, I think we sit in relatively comfortable.
Question from Curtis Williams again. Also, can the minister say if the government is committed to changing the SPT to US $75 as stated in the manifesto?
Well, once it is a manifesto promise, it is a promise the party who will be in government plans to keep. Obviously, that consultation will have to drill a little deeper between the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy. But if it's, as I said, it's a manifesto commitment, and there's a credible reason that we should up the limit from 50 to 75. Because by any stretch of the imagination, $50 is no longer considered a windfall price. And the concept of SPT is to attract windfall profits. So obviously, oil at $50 per barrel with the current production costs doesn't bring any windfall to the energy companies. So I think that is a move in the right direction.
Question from CLC. Would NGC have any role in the fine which Touchstone has?
Touchstone's acreage is 80% Touchstone, 20% Heritage. Heritage is the oil company that operates the onshore assets. the role NGC will play is that the gas will be sold to the NGC as the aggregator of gas in Trinidad and Tobago. Beyond that, no decision has been made further on that matter.
We have another question from Stephen Cummings.
Yes, and again, thank you so much. I did say the previous question was my last one, but I just wanted to ask an additional. Minister, how much is, the oil and gas sector contributing to the downstream? Because while we are reporting good news and good figures in terms of what we've been seeing, sometimes, people have the tendency to believe that that there's a sort of disconnect, from the oil companies and what they do, how they operate, and the downstream. Can you just share a bit with us on that?
I'm not sure what you mean by downstream. In the gas sector, we have a downstream petrochemical business.
Yes.
Oil,
Yes.
if you call the production of crude, obviously that is not downstream. When we had a refinery, that could have possibly be classified as downstream. As you all know, the refinery has been mothballed for a while. We hope to restart it very shortly, where the government is inching its way to a final settlement with the Patriotic Company that is owned by the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. And beyond that, again, as the point I made before, is that the service sector, which is a major employer of people in Trinidad, has to be revitalized. And the oil sector and the gas sector, to a lesser extent, will be the areas that are responsible for that. As we speak right now, most of our energy service companies are sourcing work in Guyana. And that's a very, very good sign because we have the expertise and the skills here. But however, they are homegrown and home-based, and we will also want to offer opportunities for them.
Thank you.
We have another question from Carla Bridgewell. Carla Bridgewell. Yes, Carla Bridgewell. Okay, moving along. We have a question from Curtis Williams again. Should administration return to power, and what would the administration likely to do to government revenues and exploration?
Well, technically speaking, this administration ends on August the 10th. A new administration, very likely a PNM administration, will take over. It will have a cabinet, it will have a prime minister, and while there will very likely be continuation of policy as articulated by this administration, obviously new things could come on the table. So I do not want to delve too far beyond this current administration.
Okay, and we'll take a final question from Curtis Williams again. Minister, with the projections of increased production from BHP Ruby Field, Heritage additional production, can we reasonably expect oil production to go past 100,000 barrels of oil per day by the next general election?
I will definitely hope so. It will still be a hard push. I can easily see once Ruby comes on stream, once Southwest Soldado comes on stream, and once serious work starts to take place in the Gulf of Paria, I think we can reasonably expect to take production to 90,000, and with some level of luck and success, I think 100,000 barrels per day over the next 5 years is not totally out of whack. Okay, so thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I appreciate the time and the audience that you have given to this presentation. You all have a safe day and a safe couple days ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.